few months ago, I made a review of the N6000 laptops, and particularly one which I have. And in the meantime, I noticed one or two or three mistakes. So this made me first of all to make the clip again. But the most interesting part is to see how can you understand if you want to buy, especially a 4-core laptop after the N6000 generation. And this is quite important. This is named Tremont, or if you want to buy a Gracemont, probably the things will be mostly the same. Very small differences. So let's dive in. So for people who don't know what laptop I was talking about, is this one. I would show just for completeness. I will open into a browser. Would look like this. It looks quite crappy. It has its own issues, especially about the right side. Plastic is very hard to service and so on, but otherwise it does the job. It's 1080p, and it has typically this set of specifications of 8 gigabytes of memory and 256 SSDs. So let's go back to the laptop, but you could maybe see this kind of laptop. This is in my country where I'm living, so this Acer is basically the same laptop, but this is 15-inch. So if it's a laptop like this, the question is how can you see them or think about them, especially if you are a developer. So let's go back and see. Okay, so if you see this kind of laptops, let's talk about this kind of laptops. So first of all, I will want to say, if you consider buying them, you should, very first thing to do is to go and be prepared to uninstall a lot of default software. And some of it is scarce software, and I put ExpressVPN Star because I work on a VPN software myself. I would say, even it's my particular software, I would say you should be prepared to uninstall it. Not because I don't believe in my software, but just this, I think, is these laptops are too weak, too slow to add extra bloatware on them. But if you want a VPN to it, it's fine, or an antivirus. I really think it shouldn't be added by default, especially if you, as most users, don't know what they need. And the other part which I noticed, at least with HP, it adds too much software, and a lot of it is useless. It's duplicated. You can see, as far as I remember, there were 3 applications to configure the sound, for example, 2 to configure Wi-Fi. There was one very useful kind of to install updates, but this one, I'm not sure if it was installed redundantly by Windows updates. So maybe some of them, they were not fully redundant, but many of them were. And I, as a developer, I would not know what is what. The other part is that even this CPU supports double channel, they chip out, and even it was 8 gigabyte. I think it was probably costing them $5 more to add 2 of slots with 4 gigabytes instead of chipping out and putting 1. But that's me. Also, this laptop has a passive cooling, and this is so bad that at least when I did the previous benchmarks, I noticed right now that the numbers could be even twice as slow. And especially it gives a bad impression because initially Windows starts quite slow, as it is, but as the laptop goes slower, it will feel sluggish and more sluggish. But if you put a cooling pad costs at most 22-23 euros, at least in where I live. But let's say you add $20, $25 cooling pad, it's this kind of raising up laptop with a fan underneath, the numbers will improve much more. So I would say, first of all, right away, I would compare with my fastest laptop I have in my home, and it is quite fast, believe me. It's 13900 HX. they are not in the same league processor. They use 10 times more watts. The second one, it has 4 times more cores. Some cores are faster. But I will say, if you look on these benchmarks, is that even the slowdowns are at least kind of 7.5 times in the graphics department versus around 10 times with CPU department. There is a slowdown which is very small in my understanding, and this one is in a single core. So if you have the fastest core of single core, which is the Raptor Lake now in laptops, and it is a Raptor Lake on the right side, you'll have just 2 times slowdown. So every task which uses one thread, this means typing, maybe some types of drawing, this laptops work incredibly responsive. Of course, when you go with more cores, it's not as good. And considering that this, you could see various level of slowdowns. So let's go further. In older games, with the default settings, like in XCOM, which is based on Unreal 3 engine, it will give you 21 frames per second, which is quite choppy, versus the laptop, which has just a 4060. It is at least a 10 times slowdown, but if you slow down the resolution, you'll get a 30 frame per second in 720p, and I would say it's reasonable. I mean, you can play this game, particularly this game. And similarly, CSGO, CS Source, sorry, not Go. I have it around 60 frames per second, but it will go down if one core will do something. And this is annoying. And all the 2D games, I try Hollow Knight, which is very cool game. It has a very small 60 frames per second, 1080p. So based on that, I can sum it up with few experiments which I did, and especially if you use this laptop that you want to make a 2D game, believe me, most of the time when you do a 2D game is to do drawing, and drawing runs very okay. Also, if you start medium-sized programs for painting or for coding, as much as they are medium-sized, I don't know Photoshop, I don't have Photoshop, but some Office, so some drawing tools like Krita, I tried it, or Paint.net, everything runs well, especially if you run it one by one. When you start many programs at once, the machine is very slow, and especially offending is Windows updates. Windows updates, in the way it's done, it saturates, it uses all the 4 cores typically. So when this happens, your laptop will feel like unusable, and this makes me think, or also sometimes Windows Defender. So from time to time you'll want to disable them. I would say if you put Windows updates over the night, which I think you should put Windows updates, this thing could be mitigated. Also, as I said, Windows Defender, you should disable it from time to time. I was trying to medium size projects of IntelliJ IDEA, and it was running very smooth. I mean, very smooth, not like instant like with a faster machine, but good enough that I will not notice when I will do some coding in it. Also, Office, if you want to have a heavier, let's say, text editor. And also I noticed, like, if you start larger projects, it will slow down. But I want to say, for people who don't use this IntelliJ tools, these tools, they don't only let you code, but they do a lot of background analysis with many threads. So I would say this one, if you don't, if you split the project in smaller projects, probably it will work. But otherwise, I would say you should not use Rider, at least for a lot of for big C# projects, or IntelliJ IDEA. Probably VS Code will run better in this sense, or Fleet. And also I noticed, because especially Windows updates and there is no Windows Defender in the background, the Linux programs run a bit better, then the video drivers are a bit slower, but still very good to do a game with it. So in conclusions, especially if you have an idea of a game and you are a developer uh, with good design skills, you can work on these machines. Also, the game would work if you work with some tooling that you can scale down the resolution, frame rates, levels, and so on. And this is typically even how you should do it. So when you do a game, you shouldn't make a huge map like Minecraft. You should start with a small map by 64 by 64 square, and then you'll start from there. And as much as you try the concept, this should work quite okay, I think. Also, because of that, if you use some coding languages which code quickly and they don't require too much compilation, probably you are in a better place. So I wrote here some languages which I know they compile faster, and some of them which I know they don't compile so fast. And this is not a notch on the second tier of languages. I'm simply saying you'll have a better experience overall. And also, to be fair, it's not a high-end machine. So it's a 10-watt CPU. Uh, so it is never designed to run in the same league with a processor that can consume 140 watts, or at least 70. So being 10 times slower, you shouldn't be surprised. Also, to me, I find it disappointed how these laptops are packed. Like they're packed with no chance to put double channel DDR or something like that. But if you find sometimes you can find a set-top box or NUCs which can set dual channel, you can improve a bit the performance and the memory maximum. But in general, because typically one process runs quite okay, if you need something more fancy and you don't want to use a notes program in the background because it consumes resources, and you use just a paper notebook, probably it would suffice for most of the things. And then when you want to do it later, you close your program, you start a new one, do that in the with that focus done, and you are good to go. And also I want to stress out that, because especially if you use Windows, and I think many people use Windows because they like Windows, you should look in the future for 8 cores Atoms, or maybe there will be a 16 core Atom, because to me it looks like these laptops do okay in one task. And sometimes when you have a background task because you don't expect, let's say, Windows updates, the application feels sluggish. I think the solution will be to have more cores to take at least some of this sluggishness. So uh, it was announced an 8 core by Intel, and 300 and 305. Right now I think they are not in the market, but this kind of laptop, I think it would have the same characteristics, like low wattage, low cost, but it will be good enough to do a bit more rendering, a bit of practical work, as much as one background task runs in the past in the background. And this is also because I noticed, for example, when I was running CSGO, the Windows Defender was running a bit, and the frame rate was going down 4560, 4560, and even it was single channel, so it was not the graphics, and it was a really smooth experience when simply there was nothing in the background. So probably this is a part which should be focused, and the graphics are decent enough to do something with them. So to me, I was very surprised, like what you can do. I mean, you can do stuff. Okay, thank you. I hope it was interesting, and if you like this kind of commentaries, see you next time. Bye bye.